What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So Assassin's Creed Shadows is here, and huge shout out to Ubisoft for giving me access to the game, and also for GeForce Now, who got me in streaming on GeForce Now pretty early with the game a few weeks ago as well. So I've been trying that out a lot, but I want to take a look at performance and what we've got for settings here on the Steam Deck and what you can expect for performance, at least in my first act or first 10-12 hours with the game. Now, as far as settings, they are fairly locked down, which we'll get into, and I am running this on the Ubisoft Connect app that's been sideloaded here onto the Steam Deck. I have guides on the channel for this. It's pretty easy to do if you're using your subscription to play this, or Ubisoft. Otherwise, this will also be available on Steam, and I expect very similar performance. I haven't had any issues with this install at all. Now, when it comes to the settings, though, they are locked down, and they did say this would be the case. They are planning an update in the future to open up the settings, but right now this is pretty much our only options to deal with, so we don't get to pick anything. As far as the actual settings, we can pick our upscaler type, which I'm pretty much going to use FSR, but there's XeSS here. We can adjust our dynamic resolution percentages, but we can't turn that off. It's going to use it no matter what and target 30, and we have frame generation, but that's it. Everything else has been locked away for now on the Steam Deck, and it does appear that with this, they are always targeting 30 FPS with that dynamic resolution. So that's pretty much what we're dealing with there, and you can basically stick with that or use frame generation, and you can adjust those percentages, and that's about all you can do to really adjust the performance of the game, which for the most part is going to do a decent job of just holding that 30 FPS anyway. So it pretty much works unless you were to raise the lower end of that resolution scale too high above 40, and then you do start to get a lot more drops, and that's why I stuck with the 30% as the bottom. Just got to kind of deal with that there. And there's a little bit of screen stutter and frame time issue no matter what I see, and that might be part of that dynamic resolution here. Hopefully they can straighten that out in a patch. We can also kick on XeSS in the game, which will help with some of the flicker you might get in the distance around certain objects with FSR. But for the most part, I've just opted to stick with FSR because I wasn't getting a big difference between those two in this game, especially with what we're dealing with the dynamic resolution and not a lot of options for other settings. And so pretty much FSR and frame generation is what I wound up working with here. I actually like frame generation quite a bit in this game, as long as you're manually setting your GPU to the 1600. Actually runs pretty well. You're not going to quite get that double of 30 up to 60 FPS because there's a loss here for kicking that on. But you can get into 40s and 50s, and ultimately it feels and looks pretty decent, a lot better than I thought it would, and input latency is not bad. So if you're running at this 30 FPS, no frame generation here, you're going to run around 30, you're going to get some dips in combat in some areas, and it might not look the best, but it is super playable, I would say, for a 30 FPS experience, and I could definitely do combat and all those kinds of things, and really didn't run into any serious problems. So I think for the most part, people would find it fairly playable. Might be disappointing as far as some of the visuals and FPS and all that right now, but better than some of the newer games we've seen coming out. And now with frame generation on here, combat and everything feels fine as well. And if I want to dodge or parry, I can. It's not really that bad. I play as good with frame generation on as I do without it, but still getting my bearings on some of the stuff in this game and how the combat really works and everything. But I think with frame generation, I kind of prefer it. I just think it feels better for me personally. And when it comes to weather effects in the game, which there's a ton in this game, and they actually did a fantastic job. It's gorgeous. There's a lot of wind effect, rain, all the stuff that comes in. Storms will roll in. It doesn't really seem to affect performance with or without frame gen too much. It's still targeting that 30 FPS base with 40s and 50s with frame gen, and no matter what the weather I was running into or the environment, I really didn't see much difference in any of that performance. It's just scaling the resolution and trying to maintain. Now, at your hideout, where you can't turn off that diffused global illumination ray tracing feature in settings, we will drop under 30 more consistently, and that's why I would not recommend turning that on for the rest of the game as well, because it is going to hurt your performance and your FPS there a bit as well. But frame generation here, you can see a little lower than other areas too because of that base FPS dropping a little bit, but doable. It is just the hideout, and you spend a lot of time working on your weapons and building and doing the forge and things like that anyway, so winds up being fine there. But it's just something to note, and another reason why I didn't want to tick that on otherwise. Now, GeForce Now is another great way to experience this game, as I mentioned. I've been streaming it a lot on different devices and PCs, and you can just max this out completely ultra, run at 800p or 1200p or however you want to adjust it here. We're going to get a 60 FPS stream, and you can make whatever adjustments you need to run a game at 60 FPS, and everything works really well. So of course it's going to look great this way, and if your internet connection is good enough, it's going to run pretty well for you. So I really like using GeForce Now on all of my handhelds, and this game definitely looks really good streaming on the deck and some of the other ones as well. So if you have GeForce Now, especially Ultimate, I highly recommend jumping in and giving this a shot on there. Kind of far from my Wi-Fi here, so it's a little janky, but for the most part this usually runs really well and just looks really good here on the deck and on the OLED screen, and the support of 1610 and all that. So just a note there for GeForce Now. But ultimately, I think I'll leave it there for Shadows right now on the Steam Deck. I think you guys can see plenty of what you're dealing with when it comes to performance, and it's trying to get 30 FPS as a base. With some times it's going to go under that, and with frame generation on, you're more likely to get your 45 to 55 FPS, which I think is fine. It's not necessarily made for that, but it works well enough, and I don't think input latency has been a killer there either. So anyways, guys, I'll leave it there. As always, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video. I really appreciate it. All right, thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
I will spill your